Okay, I think we've got a majority of the folks that are going to join. I'm sure we'll be having some more join in, but let's go ahead and get started. We are glad you're joining us this afternoon for our end of year task for Aware. If you missed out on last week's webinar, which was the end of year task for everything but Aware, you can find that on our YouTube channel or in our online help section under past webinars. So if you missed that and you need those other application end of year task, you can find those there as well. I am Jason. I'm on with my colleagues Jenny and Tara, and we're all part of the training team and implementation team here at Eduphoria. Be glad to answer your questions most anytime, and we specifically work on Aware a lot. We do other things as well, but for you TSNAP and test coordinating folks out there, we're your friends and used to be you guys back in the day. As always in our webinars, we have the Q&A window open, and as one of us is presenting and talking, the other two will be working on questions, answering questions. So please, if you have questions, please try to keep them on topic to what we're talking about today, and we'll try to answer those in the Q&A window. And if it needs to be something that we think needs to be interrupted and told to the whole audience, then we'll do that if need be. Today, we're going to, like I said, talk about end of year kind of things for Aware. This historically is taken care of by someone in the administration at the district level or whatever. And so if those of you that are joining, if some of you I think are teachers, we saw some of the lists. This may not be something you're responsible for, these objectives. You may not have to take these actions, but you're definitely welcome to watch, and it may give you some things that you don't even know exist that you may ask or reach out to the folks at your district that are responsible for doing this to make sure these things get done if they're not in attendance today. And then at the end, we'll also show some documentation and places in our online help where you can get further information. So we're going to go through several things today on the agenda, some management stuff from the system management deal, and then in Aware itself, and then talk about some monitoring things and move along. This will be our agenda, and you will be receiving an email following like 24 hours after this is over, roughly, and this presentation will also be part of that follow-up email, so you'll get a copy of this as well. So most of the people that do this, we actually call Eduphorians. Eduphorian is a term that we came up with probably about 6 or 7 years ago, and it's just kind of grown as what we call the people that are kind of in charge of things for Eduphoria for your district. And so I just want to turn over to Jenny right quick so Jenny can kind of more elaborate on what we think are Eduphorians.
Yeah, Eduphorians are usually responsible for managing any of the applications. So if you're in a larger district, you may have one point of contact or one manager for Strive and another one for Aware, and then another one entirely for Forethought. If you're in a smaller district, that's usually one person who manages all the applications that you use in our software. And by manage, we mean assign roles and rights, help people when they have questions or you need troubleshooting assistance. So usually the person you call if you need an answer to a question. And so again, in your district, it may be multiple people and it may just be a single person. And usually that's dependent on the size of the districts or how many departments you have that use our applications.
And some of you out there right now might be thinking, I don't know if I'm the Eduphorian or not. And so you may think you are, and maybe you don't think you are. So we just kind of end of year, kind of being cheerful. We just came up with a list of things that might indicate that you might be the Eduphorian. And so we're going to share a few of those fun ones with you right now. These just came off the top of our head. I'm not going to read through these, but you're welcome to read through and see if you can identify yourself with some of these. Like I said, Jenny and Tara and I used to be those Eduphorians as well at districts. So we used to be these person. And if you're not the Eduphorian or if you're not an admin, you know, like I said, the task that we're going to be talking about, you're probably not going to be responsible for doing these at all. So if you're welcome to exit and go do something else, but if you want to watch this, you can. Also, if if you know of who the Eduphorian is and they're not attending today for your district, maybe let them know, especially about the recording, and you can share that with them.
Absolutely.
So we're excited about this webinar. And so that makes us Eduphorians too. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say my personal favorite on this list is you think about people based on their roles and rights.
Yeah, that's exactly right. We can all relate here. Obviously, for some of us, we've been doing this for over a decade now. And so very much some of this, yeah, and some of our friends that we know that we talk to all the time, they're like seeing themselves in this for sure. You know, I number 5 when I was an Eduphorian, I put that one in. You know, I can remember I have a scanner for doing answer documents. I have one in my house, and I had it here even when I was an Eduphorian at a district, and I've scanned answer documents in my bedroom. I've rescored stuff on the laptop, you know, in an easy chair. So we've all been there, and if you are, then that probably identifies you as the Eduphorian, or at least someone very involved.
Absolutely.
We also are going to talk some more about some Eduphorian resources that we are doing, and I'll let Jenny do that.
Yeah, so we have a new process, or fairly new process in place to help support new or novice Eduphorians. So if you took over Eduphoria last year and you feel like you have a knowledge gap, or if you are taking over next year, or you know in your district you're getting a new Eduphorian, please share this information. There is a process in place to help support you. We do not want you trying to go at it alone. It's a lot. Like Jason has said several times, we have all been there. We've all been the new Eduphorian in a district, and we know it's a lot to take on. And so we do have some safeguards in place to kind of help you with deciding if you need training and what training that might be and how many hours you might need to purchase for training. And then also just some check-ins that we do with new Eduphorians, whether they purchase training or not. We do kind of want to keep you on our radar so that we make sure we get you off on the right start. You know, sometimes when you come in as a new Eduphorian, you want to clean things up and kind of start with a fresh system. We can help you do that. Maybe you want to continue to roll with what you've been doing and you just need to know how to maintain it. And we can help you do that. And so the best way, you could certainly reach out to training@eduphoria.net or support@eduphoria.net. When you let us know, hey, I'm the new Eduphorian, or I'll be managing just Strive for my district, or I'll be managing Aware for my district this year. If you'll just let support know, they'll get you in contact with your account manager, and then your account manager will loop us in to kind of help get you started and rolling with it. So we hope that you take advantage of this. And again, it may not be you, but you might know who is going to be the new Eduphorian in your district. And so please share this information with them.
And if you're not the new Eduphorian, if you're the, I don't want to say the word old, but if you're a veteran Eduphorian, or you've had that responsibility for a year or 2 or 3 or 7 or whatever, and you just want some reminders, advice, guidance, hey, can you check and make sure everything's going well with us? That absolutely applies for that. That's why we kind of have that word novice.
Absolutely.
You know, there's always things changing, and you know, it's hard to stay an expert at everything. And so absolutely, if you are a veteran out there and you would like some you know, I don't want to say hand holding, but some definite guidance, and you know, looking over your system and checking and just giving you feedback, that's absolutely something you can do as well, even if you're not brand new.
Absolutely.
Okay, let's go ahead and start with our task. And I'm going to start with the calendar. And so if you were part of the webinar last week, then obviously this went over that because it's not just for Aware, but just in case you weren't, and to make sure we cover the things that specifically are guided to Aware, I'm going to go ahead and go over the calendar. And like I said, you're going to get a copy of this presentation, but I'm actually going to move over into our demo site here and talk about the calendar. So if you go to the management application, if you're a person that has system management access, and click on school calendars, if you've been a district for a long time, you're going to see all of your calendars in there. This is something you have to do every year, but you go ahead and create a new instructional calendar. And so we're going to do that new calendar. And then you're just going to go ahead and put in your begin date. So a lot of you are probably starting around the 16th or somewhere in there. You pick your begin date of the year, and then the end date, the last date that you're going to be in school for next school year. And it's going to ask you a question about reporting calendars. Essentially, when you're looking at the word term, think of that as semester or trimester if you're in that case. So don't really focus too much on the 6 weeks and 9 weeks. That's not too much that goes on there, but definitely if you're a 3-term district, you definitely want to use that, or 2 terms. Either one would kind of work. But essentially, once again, the main thing to concentrate on there is the word term. For most of us, would symbolize semester. And so I'm going to go ahead and start editing my calendar. And so when it comes up, it's going to have all instructional days highlighted here. And for Aware, if we're just speaking about Aware, there's really not a lot of benefit other than just having it for peace to go in and put holidays and stuff in there. Now, if you're using other applications, especially Forethought, then you want to make this instructional calendar mirror your instructional calendar that your district has. But it's not a bad thing to do it for anybody out there. You'll notice that right now we have 204 instructional days. Nobody has that many instructional days. You probably have more, like 178 or 180, something like that. For example, if I move over to September, the first Monday in September is always Labor Day, and that's usually a holiday for most districts out there. And so I'm going to click on the 6th. You see how it kind of highlights it there. And then I'm going to change that to holiday, and you'll notice that this 204 is now going to go down to 203, and the 6th of September does no longer have a count. There's no longer a count there for instructional days, so it's going to go down because the 6th is not an instructional day. Obviously, you can go into your Thanksgiving, your Christmas holidays, spring break, or whatever, Good Friday, all those things that you're going to know that are not school days, and you can go in and change those to non-instructional days. You can actually do the ones that are work days as a student holiday. If you want that to match your calendar specifically, it absolutely can. There's no drawback to doing that. There's only benefit, especially if you're using other applications in addition to Aware. Now, go ahead.
We do have one question, Jason, and it's a good one. She said that she has an elementary who is nine weeks and a secondary who's on a 6-week cycle.
Perfect. So,
yeah.
Perfect question at the right time. Yep. And so that what you're referring to there is the reporting calendar. Once again, this is the instructional calendar, and underneath. So if you expand underneath each instructional calendar, you see the reporting calendar. The good thing about reporting calendars is there can be more than one. And so you notice that up here, it says new reporting calendar. And so if I create a new reporting calendar, let's just say, and I was going to do this anyway, so good question, whoever asked that. And let's say I'm just going to call this secondary, and I could rename my other one elementary if I wanted to, or whatever. And so you can go in there and change those. So one could be 9 weeks, one could be 6 weeks, like you were saying. But there's other reasons as well for making more than one reporting calendar, and I'm going to talk about those now. But let me first talk about a reporting calendar in general and kind of what it does, and then why you might want a second or even third reporting calendar for some of you in special situations out there. All right, so first, the reporting calendar's function. It specifically only affects Aware. It doesn't affect any of the other applications. And essentially, it's determining the active term. Once again, the word term for us, for most of you out there, is going to be semester or trimester. Which term are we currently in? And that determines which people can see which students. Because once again, your rosters come in from your student management system, and that determines teacher access for sure, but that also determines enrollment at schools so that principals can see certain kids or not, or whatever. And so where the instructional calendar, you want to match your calendar, the reporting calendars have no requirement of matching the instructional calendar at all. For the most part, I would venture to say that almost every district that uses these, they actually don't match intentionally. So let me tell you why. So if our first day of school next year was going to be August 16th, I'm probably going to have some professional development a week or 2 or 3 before that. And I've got to make a decision. Do I want my teachers or my principals or whoever, when they log into Aware, do I want them to see the data for the students that they're going to have, or the data for the students that they had last year? And so this date, along with your roll-up in your student management system, determines when can that happen. Most districts do a roll-up of your student management system sometime in July. Anytime after that roll-up happens in your student management system, As long as that export process is still active for you from your student management system, then this date can change to reflect the new data. And so if I wanted to say, let's go back and make this August 2nd. So I'm going to make the begin date of my next year's roster be August 2nd. And so as of August 2nd, teachers will log in, and if students are scheduled in classes for them for the upcoming school year, they'll be able to see those students. So maybe they'll be able to do some professional development, talk about data, be able to talk about curriculum and things they need to focus on because of weaknesses or whatever, things like that, instructional that they're going to do anyway. This allows them to do that. Now, not only is it a possibility, like the person asked, maybe we have 9 weeks at one level and 6 weeks at another level, but sometimes districts determine different levels will start at different times. Obviously for larger districts especially, but most districts, secondary scheduling happens in the spring. I have a daughter that's going to be in the 8th grade. We've already picked her courses, and they've already been scheduled for next year. And so those schedules will be ready as soon as roll-up happens. Sometimes elementaries don't schedule their stuff until the day before school starts or the week before because they don't know which students are going to be on campus or things like that. They're going to balance classes and new teachers and all that stuff. So if you wanted to say, okay, my elementaries, we're going to start on the first day of school, and then the secondary campuses, we're going to start on, and I didn't go through and fill the dates out here, that's why it's like this, but we're going to start on August 2nd. And so if you did that, when you make more than one reporting calendar, then under your managed schools, so let's say I go to the high school, I would pick, we're not in next year. We're still in the current term, but you'll be able to pick, my current calendar only had one reporting calendar. Once we went to the next year, you'd be able to pick which term which reporting calendar applies to this campus. So for that person that asked about 9 weeks at certain campuses and 6 weeks at other campuses, once you have more than one reporting calendar, you pick the campus that here on the current reporting calendar, you pick the one that applies to that campus. I know I kind of stuttered there a little bit, but if you have any questions about that, please ask them in the chat, or if you have specific situations about the calendar that might be unique to just you, or you have questions and want clarification, please reach out to training@eduphoria.net, and we'd be glad to go over those things with you. Back to reporting calendar, I talked about the beginning of the term. Let me just go ahead and finish before we move on with the end of term. So for those people that do 6 weeks, or let's say you end the first semester, whether it's 6 weeks or 9 weeks, right before Christmas, I would recommend that whenever you end, so let's say a lot of people end, we get out on the 17th for Christmas. We're not going to come back until like the 4th of January. You do not want this gap to be there because there would not be a current term between these. So once again, you have the option of choosing, does semester 1 end on the 17th and this start on the 4th, or this semester go all the way to the 31st and this starts back on the 1st. You just don't want there to be a gap there. You're going to determine, when does that term end, when does the next term start, and that's going to be, once again, when teachers can log in and see the students that they're going to have. The gap is problematic only if people try to log in during that time. So if someone sitting at home wrapping presents wanted to look at student data and they're a teacher, if there's a gap between the date of the end of the first semester and the beginning of the second one, they will have access to no students. So that's why we don't recommend a gap. Also the end date. So the end date, where the instructional calendar, we say it should be the last day of school. This end date, I would recommend that you're going to extend out probably until the end of June, or whatever you decide. I don't want staff being able to see student data for the past year. Once again, there could be an end date. You can determine it. It can go all the way up until our roll-up date. It could go all the way up till the day before we're going to start next year's calendar. The good thing about it is you want to make these decisions. You want to make them as a group within your data team at your district. But the good thing is you don't have to make this one time and you can't change it. These dates can always be changed up until the time that obviously the date gets here. I know we have a question about freezing your roster import. You do not have to freeze it. Essentially, you can. It's the same thing, but if you continue it, as long as that roster import, the export still contains like the last day of school, it's just going to be re-importing the same thing over and over and over again. So you don't have to freeze it as long as it still contains stuff. And so if you freeze it, essentially the last one's just staying there. If you don't freeze it, then the last one's just getting re-imported again and again. So really not a whole lot of difference as long as that file is still containing data. You just don't want it to be empty. So we would say to freeze it if that file is going to be changing or empty after that. Okay, don't see any more questions. Talked a lot about calendar there, so let's move on. If you have any questions, we'd be glad to follow up later.
Yeah. So Jason, if you'll keep driving for me, we're going to talk about managing your views and deleting quick views. What we've just talked about is a step that you definitely need to go through. Managing your views is going to be something that's kind of a district level discretion if this is a dire need for you or otherwise. So Jason, if you'll go ahead and go into the area for them to manage their views. So in Analyze, on the far left where you access your quick views, you also have access to manage views that you have built. So when you open that, you'll see a list of views, and you can go also to manage my views. And this will allow you to see those views again and either delete things that are not being utilized anymore. So you would just highlight the one you want removed and select delete. Or you could go back in and edit those. When you edit, this could be editing the actual layout of that view, and it could be editing who you are sharing this view with. So if you have certain sharing permissions turned on, that could also be edited from this area. So again, this is going to be a task that is at your discretion, what you might need to do to take action here. As you can see in our sample site, we have a lot of saved views. So it would be probably a great thing for us to go through and clean this up so we have a more manageable list of things we are actually utilizing throughout the year. And then
sorry, I didn't tell Tara this, but I went ahead and put a blank one in here. So
nice.
So like Tara was saying, we have a long list here, and I probably should have let Tara know. But so I put a blank one. Some of you people forget to name them sometimes and they share them, and so that's kind of a complete waste of space because I don't know what I'm clicking or whatever. And so that blank one is there. And so back under manage my views, where we were a few minutes ago. Oh, sorry, that click. You'll see the one here I put in there. It doesn't have a title. And so I definitely would either want to edit it and give it a name or delete it. And then if you are, sorry to step on anything, but if you are a data administrator, not only do you have manage my views, you have manage shared views, which is any view that's been built and shared with any staff. And so you can see who built it and shared it. And like Tara said, even if you don't want to delete it because you're not sure which people are using it or not, you could always change the sharing settings.
So with your quick views, this is going to be how a lot of you are used to accessing your data. And then you get that drop-down list that Jason displayed to show you that blank one. So that would be another way for you to view that list and what is there for your team to kind of collaborate on what views are we using at the district level or at the campus level. Do we need to refine any of the steps within our data practices? Are we using all of these views so that we can just have a real nice, clean data process at the district and at the campus level for your teachers and administrators? Okay, and then also last summer, we released the ability for your teachers to also be able to edit views. If that is something you have not turned on and are interested in, that is also managed here from the Analyze tab at Configuration Options. And you just have a single button to turn on to enable all of your teachers to access edit data views, and then you would save that process. Once you do this, then teachers will have the edit button when they open up a data file, and they can manage views for their own use. So they would be able to go through the majority of the steps that you can at the district or campus administrative level to create data views, like pulling in multiple assessments to compare side by side, looking at things like their student supports that were available on an assessment, how much time students spent testing, and that sort of information they could update. And then they could have a view for their own personal use to examine their classroom level data.
That's correct. I just want to highlight that those then don't become views that you as an administrator would have to manage. So they're not shared in any way. They're for personal use. So they may want to clean them up at the end of the year under their saved views, but it's not something you at the district level would have to manage.
Okay, and then next we are going to talk about our performance levels. So now this is more talking about the actual assessments and how we are initiating some of that data management for our assessments. So we have performance levels, and you have the top two fields available for your local use for you to define how do we want to use these at the local level within the district, and you can clarify that language here. So in our example, we have formative assessment developing and formative assessment accomplished for us to use on things like unit assessments or for teachers that are giving maybe more formative use assessments within their classroom to inform their instruction. And then the bottom three fields are going to align to STAR reporting. So when you're pulling in those STAR files, they're going to have those performance levels of approaches, meets, and masters. We recommend adding a slight adjustment to your language to clarify when you're looking at your local data versus your state data. So here in this example, we have approaches concept, meets concept, and masters concept. We know the majority of assessments that you're giving at the local level might not be cumulative in nature and cover a whole range of topics. They might be a little narrower and cover one or two topics. And so we wanted to provide an example of looking at that language in kind of a more narrow lens with that concept added there to the approaches, meets, and masters. And then this will help you clarify when you're looking at your data views, what has been pulled in from your local assessments versus your state level assessments. Once you make changes in this area, that language will be updated to any applicable test type. So when you're running reports, that language will change if you have made that update and hit save. And then if you are wanting to change any values on assessments, you would have to go into that assessment, change the values, and rescore. So this is not a high need for you to do. There might be some special cases where you are interested in doing that. Just know if you change values within an assessment, you would need to rescore for that data to update. However, if you change your performance level names here and click save, that will be applied to all of your data with those new headings for your performance levels.
Yeah, exactly. Just to clarify there again, I think the performance levels will affect all assessments. So you're changing the heading of the field, so it does affect historical assessments as well.
So we have a question about the actual performance levels, the value, and those are still defined at the individual assessment level. And so under your test type, and that's where Tara is now. So you see on this test type screen, you could put for the whole test type, sample numbers in here, that sort of define those values. But on every individual assessment, you still define those. So if I'm giving a fourth grade math test that's a benchmark, a district benchmark, even if my district benchmark values were, say, 70, 80, or 90, I'm going to plug in for what is specific for fourth grade math. So, whatever those passing values are on the STAR for, approaches, meets, and masters, I could use something similar. Or if it's a formative type assessment, maybe I don't expect anybody to score over 50%. So a 50% would be accomplished on that test. It's tough. It's a good one. It's a, good, thorough, rigid test. And so we're going to say, 50% is accomplished. That's okay. It's always managed at the individual assessment level, the values for those performance levels are.
Right. So now we're looking at the area where you can update your test type. So this is also on the assessments tab where we found the performance levels where we could update that language to be applied to all of our assessments. For our test types, as you're building your tests at the school or district level, you're assigning them a test type. If teachers are sharing a teacher test to a team test, they'll have some of these options available to them as well. And that's going to be controlled through that view options area. You can see those bottom 2 check marks are for making a test type available at the campus or district level. And you can see a side note there. If you want tests available for team testing purposes, it needs to be accessible for a campus level assessment. The other options here are controlling who is able to view the assessment and view data that is collected within the assessment. So sometimes we see that districts have all 5 of these turned on for every single test type that they are utilizing. So that's a good thing to have a conversation around at your district. How are we using these different test types? Do we need the same functionality available for all of them, or do we need to kind of think through and clarify some of the settings we have on here? Underneath that, we also have the editor option available, and this is going to be for that score summary for students to be able to see how they performed on an online assessment. So this allows that option to be enabled or disabled on each individual assessment that's being administered online, so that students can see a summary of how they performed after submitting an online assessment. So if you want that available, that also has to be enabled for that test type. And then below, as Jenny was pointing out, you can see the list of the performance levels and that language of how they have been set at the district. And here you would input a value. So essentially, whoever is creating the assessment knows we want to track data for maybe the bottom 3, for 3, 4, and 5, that approaches, meets, and masters concept. And you're kind of flagging them, hey, input the appropriate value based on the test you're administering. So she gave the example of, we've created this really rigorous, maybe more performance-based assessment, and that meets concept might be at that 50. And so this is really going to be defined within the assessment that you're building. And here you're just clarifying for your test authors which ones you want them to collect data on. So we know a lot of people are using this to align their local assessments to state expectations and what's communicated for performance levels with STAR, and that varies. It's not the same for 4th grade math as it is for Algebra 1. And so at the test levels where you will clarify the actual values that you want to view your data through.
Yeah, and Brandy has asked a good question here about performance levels they're not using. So first thing I want to say is you don't have to put a value in all of these. You don't even have to put a value in any of these. So if you put no value in any of these performance levels, when the test creator goes in to build a test, it's, that first screen there that pops up, they would then define themselves what those values are because no values auto-populate, where the auto-populated values come from that you sometimes see like 70 and 100. A lot of districts still have that. It's from years back. That is coming from this test type. If you want to get rid of those 70 and 100, you just delete them from this test type management. Now, if your district is only using those last 3, so 3, 4, and 5, on that performance levels management screen, you have to have something in 1 and 2. The performance levels have to be defined with words, so you have to call them something, but maybe just indicate do not use for 1 and 2, and that would let them know that you're using 3, 4, and 5. They do have to have some kind of words saved there in naming the performance levels, but you don't have to define values for those on this other screen, the test type screen.
And if you choose to do something like do not use, each field does have to be unique. So you wouldn't be able to use the exact same title for both of those fields.
Okay, just to show where we're at there, just to finish that up. And so on the assessments tab, if you're a data administrator, that's where the performance level definition of the words are. And that's what they were just speaking about. And then the configured test types is where that place is where you go in and add those types and then select those view options and set those default percentages. Just a further thing about test types, and this is always a good time to talk about this in the summer, especially some of you long-time aware users, there might be 20, 30, 40, 50, who knows how many test types in here, and that can get really messy with data exposure. And so one of the things that we do during the summer with folks, and we'd be glad to do it with you, is is we can kind of do an audit with you and clean up. It's something that Jenny and I have been doing for years, and Tara's now doing it with us too. Maybe these tests, we hadn't given these tests in 5 years, and so we don't want to delete any data, but maybe we just don't want it exposed to anybody because they're not looking at it, so it doesn't take up space for them. Maybe we want to consolidate test types 4 or 5 or 6 into one. Those kinds of things. Those tasks can definitely be done. We can help guide that, and so just reach out to the training team at training@eduphoria.net for that. All right, next we're going to talk about mass archiving tests, which before we had the mass archiver, you had to do this at one at a time, and so happy to talk about this. But I do want to go through kind of how to do it so that you can see, because sometimes people get caught up on the search function. And so at the end of the school year, we recommend strongly that all campus level and district level tests be archived. That doesn't keep you from copying them. You can still copy an assessment that's archived, but it does lock that data down, because if you were to keep that test active and someone were to give it again next year by just extending the date range, then the data from next year would be mixed up with the data from this year. And so that would be bad. And so we would recommend that if you're going to give the same type of test, maybe with some tweaks or something to the questions or whatever, you archive this year's test. And then when you create a new test for next year, you're going to copy the archive test. That's just creating a new test instance with a new test ID, and it keeps the data separate. So it's absolutely a necessity, in my opinion, to archive all campus and district level assessments. And the best and easiest way to do that is through the Mass Test Editor. And so I'm going to go down to the Mass Edit Assessments button once again on the Assessments tab. And it's going to bring you to this interface where it doesn't show anything. And some people sometimes get stuck here. You can type in a year. So like if you wanted to start with just this year, because you've already done other years, you can just type in like 2020 or whatever, and then pick on that, and it's going to bring up the tests that are available. And so you see there's 65 tests here that are in this list. You can start by year, you can start by a particular test type, you can continue to, so you see over here my test type, there's district benchmarks and wellness checks. As you start typing, it's going to limit the number of stuff that you're seeing. And only show you the ones that apply. What I definitely recommend for you folks that either have always done this every year, or even for you that you may have 4 or 5 years worth of stuff that hasn't been archived, you need to archive everything. And so the best way to find tests that need to be archived really are just searching for the active state, because if they're active, they most likely have results. And you can see that docs scored. It'll say how many documents have been scored, how many test entries have been filled with student data is essentially what that's saying. And so if you do that, then it allows you to go in and mass edit. Now, I will tell you that it's going to show you the total number of assessments that you find down here, and y'all are going to have a lot more than this because you're in a real kind of world instance, not this demo site. I will tell you that the Mass Test Editor only allows you to mass adjust, mass archive, or mass modify roughly about 120 assessments at a time. So if you need to continue to search down and say, okay, I still have way too many, I'm going to go now show me only math. Anyway, you're going to continue to search with different words or whatever to help you narrow down your search to get less than 120. Once you have less than 120, you can check on the checkbox and then click up here and click archive. Now I'm going to do this on purpose. It's going to come up with an arrow message, and I'm doing it on purpose. When you try to archive, so anytime you're trying to archive, if you're trying to archive any test that has an end date after today's date, it will not let you do it. So if you get this oops message that says, you know what, it must be after the testing end date, then someone, whoever created the test, managed the test, has selected an end date past the current date. And so you could just go find those and change them, or you could uncheck them and archive all the rest of them. If it's a test that you're using actively in summer school, obviously don't archive that until the end of summer school. And so that end date.
I want to give a clarification there. But okay, if the teacher wants to give it in summer school and she doesn't want the data combined with the students who took it during the school year,
great point,
then they would need to copy an existing test. So if she's okay with her summer school students being buried in the, everybody else data, then that's okay if you have a monitor group or something created for those kiddos. But if they want to administer that test as a standalone test, they would need to make a copy of it anyway.
That's right. So I'm going to go ahead and archive these just so you can see what it says when you're successful. And it comes up with a warning, don't let this be scary. Archiving is not scary. It's actually good. You're locking the data down so it can't be messed with. It can't change again. No entries can go in and change. There can't be more entries. This is a necessity and what we recommend. So yes, I do want to archive them. They're going to all go away because in my search, it only was showing active. And so if I were to remove math now and it's going to bring in the other subjects, it makes it very easy for you to continue to go and either search again or research to go in and archive all the assessments. And so some of you out there may have thousands of assessments, but it still should only take you, not very long, half hour at the most or whatever, to archive these because of this tool, which makes it great. You used to have to archive them one test at a time.
So I want to challenge everybody on this webinar to go into Mass Edit and just filter by the word active, not a year, just active. Yeah. And if it takes like 5 minutes to pull up, you need to do some archiving. You're going to have literally thousands of tests that are still active. So search for active and search for pending. So just start that way. And that's a good way to test your system to see how good or have we been doing at managing this. So just go in, type the word active in that search bar. And if you only pull up a few pages and they're all from this year, you're in great shape. If you pull up 30 pages of tests, you got some archiving to do. And by the way, the limit on Mass Archive is 138 assessments. You can do 138 at a time. That's the magic number.
There you go. Also, in the summer is always a good time to talk about standards because some years there are new.
Sorry, Jason. I have a question that's actually a good one because I mentioned pending assessments. Melissa asked, what about the tests that say pending? Do we need to archive? And the answer is usually yes. So if you've had a team of teachers come in and build assessments that they, for whatever reason, never administered, or even if they built them in this calendar year and they're planning to use them next year, they're going to need to make a copy of them. And so I would say yes, but you do have to turn pending test into active test in order to archive. So you'll just, search for pending, change them to active, and then change them to archived. But in 99% of the cases, yes, at the end of the year, pending tests need to be archived as well.
Yeah, and once again, if you have any specific questions or want any, your district has whatever needs, or you just want somebody that's done this 1,000 times to help you out, feel free to reach out to training@eduphoria.net. We have a lot of experience when doing this. So any questions you have, please reach out. We'd much rather you be clear in what you're trying to do, and we can help you do it and be more efficient doing it a lot of times. All right, on to the next topic, learning standards. Bringing this up for one specific reason, but anytime that there's new standards, new TEKS, you actually, in Forethought is where you manage that. And so this is kind of where you go that, and there'll be a link once again in the presentation that you will get for the online help documentation on how to do that. But wanted to bring up this specific topic about English 1 and English 2, because with the new ELA standards, the release test, it was Region 10 and the ESCCC collaborative always has put our release test in the questions into Aware for us. And it was our understanding that those questions were going to be realigned to the new ELA standards. And so you had to keep the old ELA standards on last year if you wanted those to be available in your bank when you search the bank to get those. And then they were going to realign them. They're not going to do that, but you definitely still want to go in because obviously those standards are old, they're not being used anymore. You want to go in and uncheck if you still have those checked on for your English 1 and English 2 for sure. You want to go into your Manage Learning Standards, go to English 1, go to the Options tab. You can search for English or English 1 in the search bar, and it'll narrow down your list, and then go down and find the checks. We put the year that the TEKS actually get voted on and get published. And so 2017 was, even though they didn't come into effect until a couple years after that, but that was the year that they actually got voted on, became law. And so 2017 are the most recent TEKS. The previous ones were the 9-10 year. And so you want to uncheck the 9-10 and then click that select courses button. This is what impacts Aware. So whatever's checked in the Forethought options tab and then selected is what impacts what TEKS show up when you're aligning TEKS to questions in Aware. Also, it's which TEKS are being searched when you're searching the item bank if you have an item bank subscription. So you can align more than one course if you want, but that's what's affecting in Aware. So you want to make sure you do that. If you have any questions about impacts for Forethought or whatever, please reach out to us. We can answer those questions too. But because this is specifically about Aware, this is guided to what affects Aware. Okay, also one thing in the summer that's kind of easy, something teachers need to do mostly, but admin staff can do as well. But I have the screen up here, the screenshot from teachers is if I'm a member of a team and I've given team tests in Aware or I've done team planners in Forethought, those teams are both the same in both applications, and you can edit and add and remove members of the team, delete the team in both Aware and Forethought. This is the Aware interface for teachers. Always for them at the Analyze tab and on the Assessments tabs for that matter. At the bottom, it says Edit My Teams or Create a Team. And so they can go in and create a new team for next year. They could take a team they're already a member of, teacher retired, somebody moved to a different school or whatever. We need to add and remove members. This is where you would do that. So we definitely recommend that teachers keep their teams updated. And this is the interface that does that. Once again, the link to the help for teachers will be in this presentation right here.
Okay, so archiving student forms. Archiving student forms that's really done on an as needed basis. Not every form type needs to be archived, and not every, and some of them will roll over multiple years, and some of them won't. And sometimes you need to archive some forms of a form type and not others. So we're going to go ahead and go into the software, and I'm going to show you 2 ways to archive forms. One way, and we'll go into the form management first, is really a mass archive of student forms. And so you could select a form, go to the advanced tab there, and you could mass archive all of the active forms of that form type. And so that's kind of a quick, like one sweep, got it. Every form of the student wellness check type would be archived effective today. The other way that you can archive a student form is individual forms, so one form at a time. And so if I go to Adam's profile here and he has this form, I can see first, let me see here, I can see that this form was assigned, go back a screen, assigned to him in 2017. I'm pointing to the screen in case y'all can't see me. So assigned to him in 2017. And when I click on the view form option, I could go in and archive that form. So this would archive just this tier 2 meeting form just for Adam. But when I archive it, something to know is that it actually files that form then in the 2017 school year, because that's the year the form was assigned. And so when I go to the 2016-17 school year, I can then see that student form in his profile under that school year. And so again, this is kind of done at the district's discretion. Something like RTI forms really probably need to be archived regularly. Something like, a 504 plan or something that could be a living or active form that gets updated, annually for a student. That those don't necessarily have to be archived unless the form is no longer needed for that student. So there's 2 ways, again, one at a time under the student profile or mass archive under the management tab. Either way that you archive student forms, it's going to file them under the school year that the form was assigned to the student. So just a heads up on that. Sometimes we get questions about, hey, I archived forms and now I can't find them. They're filed under the school year where they were assigned.
And Jenny said it, archiving forms is not a requirement. It's not a strong recommendation necessarily. It's just keeping things clean. Like the assessments, we definitely want you to do that. Forms, there could definitely be a form that we might continue to add information in from year to year, and we want to leave it active. Any active form, as you saw that one from 2017 was here. So any form that's still active, regardless of how long it's been there, it's going to stay on the active screen. And so just keep that in mind. But like Jenny said, archiving is, you can always create a new form. So let's say I have an RTI form or whatever and I archive it. Well, I can always add another RTI form for this year. So you just make the decision, do you keep the one out there and continue to make changes to it? Or do you want to keep the information that was in the old form as documentation and make a new form? So that's the archiving that goes on there. So absolutely.
Perfect. So I want to back up a step because we've had several questions about the TEKS update, which we should have kind of anticipated. When you're updating your learning standards, the answer to the first question is yes. When you are updating your standards in Forethought, that applies to your Aware question bank. Jason, will you go to go in Aware?
Oh, sorry.
Oh, either way. So you can check in two places. You can look here and see which questions are published under the standards tab. That's to Forethought. And if you look here under the options tab, that's what's published in Aware. I like to check which standards are published actually in the Aware application under the item bank tab. And so if you'll go there, Jason, this is in my mind a little bit quicker, I think, because I live mostly in Aware. And so when I go to the item bank tab, I can click on, again, a course, and I can look at what so I can see these are the most current math standards. They were adopted in 2012. And so there's two places to check. This is a good place to check too, to make sure I don't have my ELPs published in Aware. We see that a lot. Or that I don't have just multiple sets of standards published in Aware, because what happens when you have multiple sets or ELPs published is people, when they're building a test, they have to scroll through those to find the right standards in the item bank. And so if you have questions or you want help updating your learning standards, or you just want us to go in and check and see if your learning standards are the right learning standards, we're happy to do that. You can always email us at training@eduphoria.net. Okay, perfect. The next slide here is about monitor groups and monitor lists. And so I know it's confusing because the names of them are so similar. Monitor lists got big updates last year. And so you can now, teachers can analyze data using a monitor list. It essentially works like a pseudo roster. They can share their rosters with co-teachers through a monitor list. You no longer need that limited student data viewer role. And one of the updates that came out when all those other updates came out is that monitor lists will automatically expire after 11 months, when they were approved by the, principal on their campus. And so administrators have to approve monitor lists, and then they expire after 11 months. When a monitor list actually expires, it doesn't go away. It just gets resent for reapproval. And so it gives you a chance to kind of go in and say, yes, these people still need access to these students, or no, these people do not. And so you really don't have a lot of management stuff to do on the monitor list end. However, on the monitor groups end, it is helpful. Again, this is another optional activity done at the district's discretion, but it is helpful to manage monitor groups. And I want to show you why. When you go into the Analyze tab and you get ready to build a quick view, and you have 500 monitor groups and they all have random names, or they're all the way back to 2010, sometimes it can be really difficult to find the monitor group you're looking for. And so these monitor groups are something that you're going to want to again, delete at the end of every year. There aren't many monitor groups that you would kind of keep in place year over year anyway. And so you would go here to this manage monitor groups. It's under the students tab, and then go in and you can delete those, update those, rename those. And renaming kind of brings me to a point I wanted to make about naming conventions with monitor groups. When you're at the district level, you see all the monitor groups created across the whole district under the edit button. If you're at a campus, you're going to see the monitor groups created for your campus. And so what happens is people go in and they create a monitor list at the junior high campus that says dyslexia. Well, that's fine. The campus people realize that's their dyslexia students, but the district people have no idea what year it was created or what campus it was created for. And so again, it's just kind of that nomenclature, just like assessments, is important when you're creating monitor groups. And then again, just that annual cleanup. So that may be something you kind of look at adopting this year, is better naming conventions for monitor groups. And then also making sure people, if you don't want to have to go in and clean them all up, making sure people on their campuses go in and clean up the monitor groups they've created each year.
Yeah, what I would do back in the day when I was at like the district, when I was the Eduphorian, you might send out a warning email or something, or to all the folks, administrators at least, hey, I'm going to go in and clean up monitor groups district wide at every campus. If you have one that you want to stay because it has staying power for next year or going forward, either identify that through a school year or email me and let me know. But keeping things clean is absolutely best for all users, not just yourself.
All right, perfect. So we wanted to, provide these links because you will get a copy of this presentation at the end. These are the help sections that are available for end of year stuff. We have a section for administrators, teachers, and staff, and then we have a new section for Eduphoria resources. And so, and there's also a link to the Aware setup section. We can go to the next slide. And it itemizes here, this slide, you can see what's living in both, but two of them that are new that I want to mention, the Eduphorian calendar of events. That's a great resource. It literally itemizes everything you should be doing or could be doing. Again, some of the extra things are in there, like managing student forums and whatnot. So it's suggested items at each point during the year. That's also part of sort of our new Eduphorian process. They get provided these resources, but they're available to everybody under Eduphorian resources here at this help section. And we've also created a recommended annual training for faculty. So just a reminder of at the beginning of the year, doing that forethought training with your teachers, our recommendations for that, doing that, building assessments or online test proctoring, when those should happen or when we recommend that those happening. So those are good new resources that are available in addition to those that were already existing that cover all of these end of the year activities we've been talking about. All right, and if you have any final questions, I know there's a couple sitting in here. We'll get those answered before we leave this webinar, but you can always post those. You can also email us at training@eduphoria.net, or if you have questions over another topic, training@eduphoria.net is the best place to reach us. And help is always available. That's our online help section. And then through our support resources, support@eduphoria.net or training@eduphoria.net. In 2 weeks, we have Aware Data and Axiom webinar. Please, please, please know that is not specific to Axiom customers. We are going to cover Axiom, but we are also going to cover some accountability stuff that a lot of you might have questions about. We all have questions about accountability this year, and we have folks from Region 10 coming in to help us with that. And so we want to encourage you to attend, whether you currently subscribe to Axiom or not. We'd love to show you, and we will show you what Axiom is capable of during the webinar. But we'll also, again, just going to talk about some of the accountability stuff that is on everybody's mind right now.
And those of you that don't know what Axiom is, most of you are going to have a trial license of Axiom this year, since accountability, we're not accountable districts this year. And so everybody is, like Jenny said, welcome for that and encouraged to, especially if you're a district test coordinator and those kind of role. If you're that role, you definitely would want to attend that webinar for sure.
All right, and so if you aren't currently getting our news and announcements, you can sign up for news and announcements. You'll get emailed, notified you'll get a newsletter. You'll also get, so a lot of times that introduces releases or changes that you might not see in our system. You also get notified about these webinars and upcoming events that Eduphoria may be doing. And so again, that's in our help section under news and announcements. You can click on how can I receive announcements and then fill out the form, and you'll be subscribed to our email list. We also have a YouTube channel available. We also have socials at Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. We love to have you involved in our conversation on our social media. All right. Thank you all for attending. We really appreciate your time. We hope it was worth your time. We made it just under. We were worried about the time. It's 3:02. I think we did good.
Yeah, exactly an hour. Hope everybody's going to have a great summer. We'll talk to you soon. Thanks.